Episodes of the Green Corn Rebellion Show are sponsored by Oklahoma Progress Now. Oklahoma Progress Now is a 501c4 organization focused on building progressive power in Oklahoma. Their primary efforts are on developing progressive content for a 21st century audience, coalition, and capacity building across progressive organizations and causes, and working to see elected leaders who are more responsive to their constituents and the needs of the many. Areas of focus include progressive messaging and communications, coalition building and resource sharing, and focused progressive policy goals. You can check out their Twitch live streams, and they go live on Facebook on at noon, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Please support this organization. It's a really great organization. It's just getting started here in Oklahoma. Thank you. Now enjoy the rest of the video. Hello, this is the Green Corn Rebellion Show. I'm Gregory Harden II, and today I am here with State Representative Andy Fugate, who represents District 94 out in the Del City, South OKC area here in Oklahoma. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. And thank you for inviting me tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming on. So first question I have here is, where are you from and where did you grow up at?
So, dad was military, and so where I was from varied from year to year to year until I was 10. I was born in Northern California, and then every 2 years we moved around. When dad retired, he retired here to Tinker Air Force Base. And so from age 10 on, I've been here basically the rest of my life. I've had opportunities to move away a few times, and my wife and I entertain those ideas, but this is home. This is where family is, and so I live about 5 blocks from where my parents' house was when I grew up.
All right, that's cool.
What's that they say
And
about the nut not falling far from the tree?
yeah, so what all have you done prior to becoming a state representative?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the question I think that was originally proposed and asking me about being a band director, and I'm going to start with that. So I spend a lot of time volunteering in classrooms, and I have over the last couple of decades, and it goes back to my time in school. And I was very blessed to be part of an outstanding jazz music program at Del City High School. And several of my classmates were and still are professional musicians all over the world. Two guys who were Grammy nominated and well, actually both at one time or another in their careers were part of groups that got Grammys. One in Zydeco music and then one in Afro-Cuban music. And so, I was blessed. I was one of the average players, not one of the outstanding players, but as an adult, I've spent a lot of time trying to find ways to give back to those, especially my teachers along the way. And so I spend a lot of time working with jazz band kids. My career, though, has been in technology and technology leadership. Most recently, I spent 2 decades at the Oklahoman managing enterprise projects, mobile software development, and internet technology. So if you've ever gone to NewsOK or Oklahoman.com or uh, those were the sites, among a number of others, that my team put together. I'll share with you a humble brag. When they first introduced the App Store and news subscriptions, there were two news organizations listed. Steve Jobs had up behind him on the stage. One was the New York Times, and the other was the Oklahoman. Folks on my team.
Okay, that's cool. That's really cool. I didn't know that. Um, so what made you run for state representative?
I got tired of electing people that think their job is to tear down government. I mean, that seems kind of silly, but it seems like today everybody wants to elect somebody who's an outsider who doesn't know anything at all about government, and all those people do is just shout and scream and talk about how awful government is, which is silly. I mean, because government is us, right? I mean, it was Abraham Lincoln who said government is of, by, and for the people. And it seems today like everybody, at least on the Republican side, thinks it's of, by, and for business. It's not. It's all about us. And so, that was it. I will also tell you that I've always been a guy who loves to dig on problems. The bigger the problem, the better. And we got a lot of problems at the state level. And, I love working with teams to solve problems.
All right. Could you tell me about some of the accomplishments that you've been proud to be part of at the Capitol?
Yeah. Now, this is going to sound strange, but I think the biggest accomplishment I am proud of at the Capitol is civility. You know, um, we had 4 years of people who were just shouting and screaming at each other and who, kept pointing fingers at each other. And it seemed like nobody was listening to each other. And good stuff doesn't happen when that happens. I'm a big believer that we can all disagree and do it in ways that aren't disagreeable. And when we disagree and still listen to each other, we find ways to work together on things, and we always come up with better solutions than those of us working individually. And that's the power of synergy. And so, I'll give you an example. The very first thing I did when I got elected was reach out to the Speaker of the House, Charles McCall, and ask for a meeting. And we sat down and spent 30 minutes talking about that one issue, how to disagree without being disagreeable. Because I knew I was going to come in and I had a lot of different ideas than what the majority party has. But if I spent all of my time just shouting at them and yelling and, jumping up and down, it wouldn't help anything. And I want to be part of the solution. So how can you do that and still disagree? And so that's what we talked about. So to me, that's the biggest accomplishment. I will tell you that the formal announcement hasn't been made yet, but Leader Virgin has asked me to be the next minority floor leader for the caucus. So David Perryman has retired and has left some very large shoes to fill. But I've spent also a lot of time volunteering, working with high school kids out at the Capitol. And so I've learned a lot about the process over the years. It's 35 years worth of doing that, teaching kids about the process. And so that's kind of helped position me for that. And I'm looking forward to helping make the caucus team successful out at the Capitol.
All right. That sounds great. And thank you for the breaking news there.
Yeah, they haven't done the press release yet, but Emily has announced it to the caucus. And, it's kind of a little unnerving considering I've only served for 2 years. But I have followed the legislative process extensively, like I said, for 3.5 decades, and have taught high school kids all about the process. So I have some insight that I can bring to the table.
All right. What are some things you'd like to see get passed or be addressed at the Capitol in the future?
That's a question. And I'm going to answer it in a very nebulous fashion. And I'm going to tell you that what I most want to see is good legislation passed. And that takes a bunch of different forms. I spent a lot of time over the last 2 years asking questions at the Capitol. And, when a bill would come up, I was almost always asking a half a dozen questions about whatever it was, because I want us to make good decisions. And I got frustrated at times because sometimes it's obvious that legislators are just making up answers, and sometimes it's obvious they're just reading from a card that's got 3 or 4 bullet points on it that was handed to them by somebody. So, I would email questions to members and say, hey, here are the questions I'm going to ask, so they could do better than just a couple of bullet points. But I'm interested in better government more than anything else. In terms of specific priorities, I'm a big believer that there are 2 things that will fundamentally change Oklahoma if we want to be a top 10 state. Number 1, education. Quality public education should not depend on what your zip code is. And that's where we are today. Number 2, mental health. We need to radically improve mental health outcomes in the state of Oklahoma. You know, we had an opportunity to at least get a start with that 4 years ago when we passed State Question 780 and 781. I don't know if you remember, 780 decriminalized a lot
I
of
do,
things.
yeah.
Yeah, well, what did 781 say?
You're
781
supposed to
said we were
fund it.
supposed to, yeah,
Yeah.
take the money that we saved from not sending people to prison and put that into mental health and substance abuse. The very first year when we did the estimate was 2018. The state estimated we saved $63.5 million. And no surprise to you, but we've put a total of zero so far into that fund. We haven't done a thing with it, even though the people told us that's what we were supposed to do. So we need to fund mental health. We need to fund public education, and we need to take some of the constraints away from teachers who spend so much time doing other things besides educating our kids. We fix those two things, I'll be happy, and I think the state will be on a far different trajectory from where we are today.
All right. How do you feel about the response to the coronavirus that the governor has had?
Embarrassed. It's tragic how bad, and I shouldn't be laughing. I mean, because quite honestly, I've had another friend this morning passed away overnight, COVID. Um, you know, it starts with this basic premise. If you want people to be responsible for their own decisions, don't hide information from them. We had a White House task force report that we were getting every week, and the governor wasn't showing it to anybody because he didn't like what it said. Well, he was making a decision for everybody he was telling that they were supposed to make their own decisions, right? So, embarrassed, heartbroken is probably another good word to use. It's as though we are leaderless in this whole process. And it's not just at the state level. I mean, it's at the national level. That's where the leaderlessness started. It's very clear that we don't have a national plan. And so not having a state plan doesn't really, I mean, it's kind of par for the course, I guess.
Yeah. Also, do you think that the state legislature will do anything to address the pandemic at all? Are there any fears of budget shortfalls this coming session?
So we'll tackle those as two separate questions. And the first one, the answer is no. We couldn't even get those yahoos to wear masks when they swore us in. It's just, it's silly. We have a masking mandate that we're putting in place out at the Capitol, but it
Hmm.
doesn't apply to members.
What?
Yeah. Isn't that silly? I mean, we have and all these people who say, well, you know, it's personal responsibility and that's my own right. Well, you know what? The House rules say that I have to wear a tie and pants, right? I can't
Yeah.
come in wearing shorts or I can't come in not wearing pants. Well, you're telling me that it's okay to tell me that, but that you're not allowed to tell me to wear a mask? That's just stupid. So, do I think we'll do anything about the pandemic? Um, no. I mean, here's another example. You know, on November 15th, the Open Meetings Act in the state of Oklahoma had a provision that expired, and that provision said that all of these boards could meet virtually. And there was a reason why we had it expire on November 15th. It's because we knew we would have a new legislature seated. But we didn't come back and request a special session to have it continue. And the numbers aren't going down, they're continuing to go up. But we're forcing all of these state boards and even local. I mean, our local city councils have to meet in person because those provisions expired on November 15th. And could we do something? Yes, but we haven't, and I don't think we will. Now, as far as the budget shortfall, we're going to find out on December 22nd what the first projection is from the state Board of Equalization. Um, it's probably not going to be great. It's probably going to be short, hopefully not tragically short the way we were last year. And there's going to be a lot of conversations about how we make up for that shortfall. I'm a believer that we have tax credits that we could eliminate. And so I think that's the first place to start. And then whether or not there's a will to do anything else kind of depends on my colleagues. The other thing, and I answered this question for Channel 5, Channel 4. Anyway, for a television station when they asked me about this, and I said, I'm not worried about the budget. I mean, the governor, when he ran for office, said he could find 10% just like that in savings. So
Hmm.
it's time to put up or shut up. You know, the state budget, appropriations budget is $8 billion. Well, 10% of that is 800 million. So go find us 800 million in efficiencies, and of course he won't. But it's time to put up or shut up.
Yeah. All right. Last question I have here is what kind of music do you listen to?
Rat Pack. I don't know if you do Rat Pack music. Big band jazz. So I mentioned that I spent a lot of time volunteering working with kids. I'm a semi-professional trombone player, and I play in a couple of jazz bands in town. The Talk of the Town Big Band, the Middle Jazz Orchestra, and occasionally get calls to sit in with other groups. I do some top 40 cover band stuff with Dave and the Wave Tones, which is a lot of fun. Um, but a lot of the music that we're playing there, I'm not that familiar with. It's kind of sad. If it's more recent than about 2000, maybe 2005, then I've got to go find it someplace, Spotify or Apple Music, and go listen to it. It's like, oh, okay, now I know what we're doing. Um, I'll listen to other things, just about anything, but modern, like Glee style stuff, that's just awful. I do like Broadway show tunes.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Where can we find you on social media?
So you can find me at Fugate on Twitter, um, on Facebook. My public Facebook presence is Fugate for HD94. That's the number 4. And then you can find my website at www.andyfugate.com.
All right. Sounds good.